Have you ever stopped to think if your salary is truly an income or just a poorly calculated reimbursement? Because, in theory, the logic seems simple. You work, you get paid at the end of the month, and that's it. That's earning money. But what if this idea, so automatic, so accepted, is hiding a much more uncomfortable truth? What if in practice, you're not getting richer, but just paying to keep working? It may sound exaggerated now, I know, but stick with me until the end of this part, because what you're about to discover may surprise you more than you imagine. Most people never question this basic equation. The salary comes in, the bills go out, and life goes on. That's how it's always been. But there's a dangerous detail in all of this. Nobody teaches you to add up what comes with work. Nobody talks about the emotional cost, the mental cost, the time cost, and especially the invisible financial cost that accumulates day after day. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling of working more, striving harder, earning a little more, and still feeling like there's never really enough money left over? That's when the salary starts to become an illusion. Because the problem isn't how much you earn, but what that income really represents after everything that's normal is deducted. Transportation, eating out, clothes you wouldn't buy if it weren't for work, fatigue that prevents you from thinking about alternatives, automatic decisions that seem small but repeat themselves every month. In isolation, none of this seems serious. Together, it becomes a constant drain on money and energy. And the most dangerous thing, almost nobody notices. The human brain loves to normalize what is repeated. When something becomes routine, it ceases to be questioned. You wake up early, face traffic, solve problems that aren't always yours, come home tired, spend money to relieve stress, and call all of this adult life. But little by little, this routine begins to consume not only your time, but also your ability to see your own financial behavior. The salary arrives as a momentary relief, but not as real progress. And perhaps that's why so many people, even being responsible, hardworking, and disciplined, continue to feel financially trapped. The most curious thing is that nobody wakes up one day and decides to become poor. This happens through normal, socially accepted decisions that seem safe. Decisions that everyone makes. And precisely for that reason, almost nobody questions them. The salary begins to function as a kind of anesthesia. It prevents immediate collapse, but it also prevents deep reflection. You continue on autopilot, believing you are progressing, when in reality, you are only keeping the game going. Perhaps, as you listen to this now, something is starting to make sense. Perhaps a calculation that has never been made. An old feeling that you never knew how to explain. And it is precisely here that everything begins to change. Because, from the moment you see your salary not as a reward, but as part of a larger system, other questions begin to arise. And it is exactly about these questions that I want to delve even deeper from here. And if, while you're listening to all this, some scene from your own routine has already passed through your head, that's no coincidence. Usually, when a subject bothers you like this, it's because it touches on something real, something you've experienced, something you feel but rarely put into words. Maybe it's that constant tiredness that doesn't match the amount of money that lands in your account. Maybe it's the strange feeling of always being busy, always rushing, and yet never really making progress. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Sometimes, writing this down is already the first step towards seeing things more clearly. And I say this because this space isn't just mine. It only truly exists when it becomes a conversation. When you comment, you're not just sharing your experience. You're showing other people that they're not alone in this silent feeling of paying too high a price for something they've called normal. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who also need to hear this kind of reflection, but don't yet know how to put it into words. If this video is making you think differently, liking it now is a simple way to say, this content matters. This helps the video reach more people who may be stuck in the same cycle without realizing it. And if you feel that this type of conversation is different from what usually appears out there, subscribing to the channel is almost a silent commitment to yourself to continue questioning automatic decisions, invisible financial behaviors, and choices that seem harmless but shape an entire life. Here, the idea isn't to judge or point fingers. It's about raising awareness. It's about building, little by little, A community of ordinary people who have decided to stop accepting certain things on autopilot. And from that point, when we start looking at our salary, our routine, and our daily decisions with different eyes, new questions arise. Questions that almost no one asks, but that completely change the way you see your own money and your own time. When we start looking more closely, we realize that the salary doesn't disappear all at once. It slips away little by little in decisions so common, they go unnoticed. And perhaps that's the part that hurts the most. There's no clear villain, no glaring mistake. There's just a set of automatic choices that everyone treats as inevitable. The daily commute, for example. It's not just the fuel or the fare. It's the time that never comes back. The mental energy spent even before the day begins. The accumulated fatigue that changes your mood, your patience, and even how you decide to spend it later. All of this has an impact, even if no one teaches you how to calculate it. The same thing happens with eating out. Not because eating out is wrong, but because it becomes emotional compensation. It's the small relief amidst the chaos, the silent reward for enduring another day. Little by little, this habit ceases to be an exception and becomes routine. And when it becomes routine, it ceases to be questioned. The money goes out without guilt because it seems justifiable. But along with it, the possibility of future choice also goes out. The salary keeps coming in, but it represents less and less freedom. Clothing follows the same logic. It's not extravagant. It's not luxurious. It's appropriate. Appropriate to the environment, the position, the expectations of others. Small purchases that seem harmless, but exist only because that job demands a certain image. And nobody usually includes that in the mental calculation of how much they actually earn. It all goes into the same dangerous category, normal cost of living. But normal doesn't mean neutral. There is still a cost that is almost never noticed, but perhaps the most expensive of all: mental energy. After a whole day solving problems, meeting deadlines, dealing with constant pressure and noise, there is very little room left to think clearly. Decisions become shorter, more emotional, less strategic. It is in this state that people spend more, postpone changes, accept worse conditions, and repeat patterns that no longer make sense. Not for lack of intelligence, but for exhaustion. When all of this adds up, time, energy, small expenses, automatic decisions, the salary that seemed good starts to shrink. Not in the bank statement, but in the real impact it has on your life. And the most curious thing is that the work itself isn't the problem. The problem is the invisible package that comes with it, and that almost no one teaches you to see. That's where the hidden truth of this financial journey lies. Many people aren't being underpaid. They're being poorly informed about the total cost of their own decisions. This type of revelation often causes discomfort because it forces one to reconsider their own mindset. It forces them to get out of autopilot mode and confront the behind-the-scenes aspects of their routine. But it also opens up space for transformation because everything that is seen can be rethought. And when you start to separate what is truly necessary from what has merely been normalized, something changes inside. The way you look at money changes. Your relationship with time changes. Your perception of impact changes. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because when these small decisions cease to be invisible, other questions begin to arise. Questions that directly affect bigger choices, life direction, and the feeling of being stuck or truly moving forward. But before continuing, if this made sense to you, comment below. That makes sense to me. Once the invisible bill starts to appear, an inevitable question arises. If this is so clear, why do so many intelligent people accept this logic for years without reacting? The answer lies not in a lack of skill, nor in laziness, nor in obviously bad decisions. It lies in something much more subtle, almost imperceptible, that operates behind the scenes of the mind. The error is not financial, it's psychological. It's the way the brain adapts, protects itself, and without realizing it, becomes trapped. When a cost is repeated many times, it ceases to seem like a cost. It becomes part of the scenery. The normalization of spending works like this. What once caused annoyance becomes treated as part of the landscape. Traffic stops being an absurdity and becomes the norm. Eating out stops being an exception and becomes what's manageable. Lost time stops bothering us because everyone around us also loses time. And when everyone does it, the mind concludes that there is no choice. This is one of the most powerful hidden truths of this journey. The brain confuses repetition with necessity. Social comparison further reinforces this entrapment. You look around and see people in the same routine, with the same habits, the same complaints, the same limitations. This creates a strange, almost dangerous comfort. If everyone is like this, then it must be right. If everyone accepts it, then there must be no way out. But this comparison is rarely made with those who have escaped the cycle, only with those who are inside it. The result is a collective mentality that validates automatic decisions and blocks any attempt at deeper questioning. There is also the fear of change, disguised as prudence. The mind prefers familiar discomfort to new uncertainty. Even when routine consumes energy, money, and time, it still seems safer than any alternative that requires adaptation. This fear doesn't shout, it whispers. It says to wait a little longer, not to risk it now, to endure just one more year. And so, year after year, temporary choices become permanent. Short-term bias completes this cycle. Immediate relief always trumps future pain. Spending to alleviate stress today seems more real than the abstract promise of freedom tomorrow. Accepting slowly draining conditions seems better than facing the discomfort of change. The brain has been trained to survive the present, not to optimize the future. And that's precisely why impoverishment happens without drama, without explosion, without collapse. It happens silently, as a result of decisions that were never reviewed. When you understand this, something important changes. Guilt begins to lose its power and gives way to awareness. It's not about being weak or irresponsible, but about having operated in default mode for years. And everything that operates in default mode can be reprogrammed. The transformation begins when you realize that you are not trapped by a lack of money, but by a lack of questioning. When the mindset changes, the impact goes beyond finances. It reaches choices, priorities, and how you perceive your own time. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when these psychological mechanisms become clear, it becomes impossible to look at your own routine in the same way. Some decisions start to bother you, others lose their meaning, and certain truths begin to demand action. But before continuing, if this resonated with you in any way, leave a comment below. I'm on this journey too. When you put all these pieces together, what emerges is not an isolated problem, but a silent, self-reinforcing cycle that happens every day. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't attract attention, it doesn't generate an immediate crisis. On the contrary, it works precisely because it seems stable. Constant fatigue reduces your energy for deep thinking. Without mental energy, decisions become shorter, more defensive, more focused on surviving the day than on building something bigger. And worse decisions even, small ones, increase dependence on your salary because they close doors before you even realize they existed. This cycle doesn't begin with money, it begins with burnout. A tired body craves relief, an overburdened mind craves simplicity. And the system around us offers exactly that. Quick solutions, ready-made choices, paths already validated by the majority. It's easier to continue than to question, easier to repeat than to reinvent. But every time that choice is made, something invisible is lost. It's not just money. It's focus. It's quality time. It's the ability to imagine alternatives outside the standard script. In this environment, dependence on salary grows because it becomes the only perceived point of security. Even when it barely covers the emotional and financial costs of daily life, it still seems indispensable. And the more indispensable it seems, the less room there is to think about change. This creates a strange feeling of comfortable imprisonment. It's not an acute pain, it's a constant weight. It's not a collapse, it's a gradual exhaustion. The journey continues, but each step seems to require more effort than it should. The impact of this becomes apparent in the long term. Options dwindle without anyone announcing it. That idea that once seemed possible begins to appear too risky. That decision that would require extra energy is postponed indefinitely. The future is pushed forward while the present consumes everything. And the most dangerous thing is that on the outside, everything seems to be working. The salary comes in, the bills are paid, the routine is maintained. But inside, something is being drained every day. The margin of choice. This is one of the less talked about behind-the-scenes aspects of ordinary financial life. It's not about irresponsibility, but about accumulated wear and tear. It's not about a lack of ambition, but about excessive exhaustion. The hidden truth is that few people remain trapped because they want to. Most remain trapped because they gradually lost the energy needed to break free. And when that energy disappears, even good opportunities seem too distant to reach. Realizing this cycle is uncomfortable, but it's also powerful, because everything that works in a cycle can be interrupted. The transformation begins the moment you understand that you're not just working too much, but thinking too little, not by choice, but out of exhaustion. And when that realization hits, new questions begin to arise. Questions that touch on bigger decisions, on life direction, and on the kind of impact you want to have on your own future. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a specific point where this cycle can be weakened. A point where small changes in mindset begin to generate much greater effects than they seem at first glance. But before continuing, if this reflection resonated with you, leave a comment below. That makes sense to me. There's a specific moment when something changes inside. It's not when your salary increases, nor when a miraculous opportunity arises. It's when you realize that the real problem was never earning too little, but accepting too much without realizing it. That's the turning point. It's when your mindset starts to shift out of autopilot and begins to observe your own habits more attentively. Not to blame yourself, but to see. Because seeing changes everything. Thinking like someone who wants to stop paying to work requires an internal shift. You stop asking just, how much do I earn? And start asking, how much does this really cost me? This simple change in perspective already creates an impact. Invisible costs cease to be invisible. Time begins to have weight. Mental energy starts to be considered a finite resource. And decisions that previously seemed neutral begin to reveal consequences that were hidden behind the scenes of the routine. At this point, many people imagine that getting rich begins with big decisions, bold moves, radical changes. But in practice, transformation begins in everyday life. It begins when you stop normalizing what drains you, when you realize that not every expense is financial, not every loss appears on your bank statement, not every setback makes a noise. Some losses happen silently, but they shape entire years of your life. And those who understand this early on gain something far more valuable than money, a margin of choice. People who achieve financial freedom aren't necessarily smarter or luckier. They simply train their eyes to see what most people ignore. They question routines, observe patterns, and revise decisions that have always been made on autopilot. They understand that earning more without changing the structure only accelerates the cycle of decline. Therefore, the initial focus isn't on increasing income at any cost, but on reducing the invisible cost of existing within a system that consumes energy, time, and clarity. When this hidden truth begins to make sense, something internally reorganizes itself. The journey ceases to be merely surviving the month and becomes about building direction. Small changes in mindset begin to generate cumulative effects. A little more awareness here, a more thoughtful decision there, a silent refusal to accept certain patterns as inevitable. None of this seems grand at first, but the impact appears over time, because now the choices are aligned with a greater goal, to stop trading life for compensation. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because from the moment you start to see what was previously invisible, new criteria for decision-making emerge, different priorities arise, and a completely new relationship develops with your work, with money, and with time. That's when true change begins to take shape, from the inside out. And before we continue, if this reflection sparked something in you, leave a comment below. I'm on this journey too. If you've made it this far, it's because something along the way resonated with you. It wasn't just information, it was identification. And this kind of reflection isn't common, because it doesn't offer ready-made answers, but changes the way you look at decisions that previously seemed too normal to question. If this content helped you see something that was hidden behind the scenes of your routine, subscribing to the channel is a simple way to continue this conversation. The idea here is exactly that: to bring clarity, provoke thought, and help build more conscious choices, one step at a time. If this makes sense to you, leave a comment saying so. This message was for me. This shows me that you stayed until the end, and at the same time, creates a real exchange between those who are going through the same journey. And if this conversation captivated you, liking the video now is a natural way to acknowledge this connection and help this type of content continue to reach more people who need to hear it. There's a video over here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this reflection. Click and continue reading it.